Okay, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, and that means it's time for Live at Epiphan. I'm your host, Dan, and today we have a special guest joining us from the Palo Alto Epiphan office. I'd like to introduce everyone to Marta. Marta, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, and I think this is the first time that we've actually connected our two offices in Ottawa
Yeah.
and Palo Alto. So this is cool. I'm glad we're finally doing that. And you were just telling me it's like 20 degrees
Oh my
Celsius
God. Yeah.
there.
It's 20 degrees Celsius, about 70 Fahrenheit. It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
yay.
you're making me jealous. I might need to come visit the Palo Alto office soon.
But don't worry, we're 3 hours behind. So you guys are ahead of us. You guys are
Okay,
in the
that's
future. We're still living in the past.
well, we're somehow bringing the future and the past together right now because we're both here live on the Epiphan show. And for those of you new to the show, this is the show that's all about live streaming, video technology, and video production. And we like to share some best practices, some equipment recommendations, tips, tricks, all that kind of stuff. And the reason we have Marta here on the show today is because we have a very relevant topic for our webcaster audience, and that is we're going to talk about some of the accessories, some of the items that you might want to include in your webcaster kit. So if you're going out producing mobile live streams, maybe you're streaming events, maybe you're doing something at your house of worship, or perhaps you're doing some live streams from, I don't know, the local pub, you're seeing a band, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of really cool accessories that you can use to trick out your webcaster and get the most out of it. So we're going to be sharing some of that today. Before we do, I do want to just quickly mention some news. Next week, February 6th to 9th, is ISE Europe. And Epiphan will be there, of course. I'll be there. George Herbert and Matthew and some of our other team will be there as well. So if you're going to be in Amsterdam, make sure to come and say hello. We'd love to check in with you guys. We're going to be at booth 11-C115 at ISE. So that's 11C115. Of course, you'll be able to find links to all of that on the ISE exhibitor website. And if you have any questions about our products, or you want to try out the Webcaster X2, or you want to try out the Pearl, if you want to live stream from our booth, definitely come by and say hello. We're also going to have some very exciting glimpses into the coming year. We have some new products on the way, and we might be showing off some of those at ISE. So it's going to be exciting. There's going to be a lot to talk about, and we're looking forward to it. So hopefully see you there. So today we wanted to take a closer look at some of the accessories that work really well with Webcaster X2. And Marta, I wanted to get you on the show because you have been playing with Webcaster a lot lately. I've been watching some of your live streams. So maybe you can share some of that experience. How has it been learning and using Webcaster X2?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. I have been testing this thing quite a lot, and I'm not like a tech major per se. And when I was given this, I actually specifically wasn't given any instructions, just to see if I can figure out how it works. And it was really easy. My main goal was to see if I could go out like into the field and use the Webcaster X2 to live stream on the go. So if I can use some outside Wi-Fi to stream live somewhere, outside the office where we don't have Ethernet. And it's been a very positive experience. It's been great. I really like this little box right here.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly for the size and sort of form factor of the Webcaster X2, it definitely packs a punch. There's a lot of ways you can use this, and there's a lot of ways you can get the most out of it. So I wanted to show your setup. So I've got a picture of it here. Lisa, maybe we could go to the image there. So this is a little glimpse into your setup with Webcaster X2. Oops, I just unplugged my my screen there. There we go. So we're looking at a photo of your setup here, Marta, and you've
Yep.
got a tripod with, I think, what is that, a Canon
That is a
XF205?
Canon, yeah. XF205, that's right. It looks like a pretty intimidating camera, but it actually is not. It's really simple to use. You kind of just point and shoot. So it's a great camera. Yeah, that's what we were working with.
And you've also got, it looks like a few different attachments right onto the tripod. So you can see, obviously, Webcaster X2. It looks like you've got a little external monitor going there as well, some
Yeah,
cables.
yeah. So that was our mobile setup. If you look, so you have your tripod, you have your camera on top, and then on the right we have a monitor, an external monitor so you can see the feed or you can tweak some things inside the Webcaster if you want. And then attached on the left is the Webcaster. And then on the bottom, you can also see the power bank that we're going to be talking about in just a second. That is to power up the Webcaster because it needs some power.
Very cool. So why don't we kind of go into a bit more detail about, how you came about this setup, why you picked the parts you did, and what worked well for you. So, um, a lot of people want to be able to use their Webcaster on the go, out in the field, mobile, whether you're at an event or whether you're streaming some kind of speaking series or wherever you want to go. So, in order to do that, I mean, obviously, Webcaster typically plugs into an AC outlet, but
That's
you
good.
can also run it off a battery. And maybe you could tell us a bit about how you did that.
Yeah, for sure. So what I was using, and I found that works really nice, is this Anchor battery. So this is just your typical, power bank or cell phone charger. The cell phone chargers are usually really small, but this is a big one. This is a good one. It has lots of power. And you also need the cable, right? So the USB cable that runs from the Webcaster into the battery. So on one end, it's a USB. On the other end, it's a barrel type N, what is called a barrel type N, which is what Webcaster is using. And so this particular one, the Anchor battery, it has a really good capacity. And there's actually a little light that tells you how much charge you have left. I mean, this thing lasted for the entire stream that I was doing, which was about, I don't know, it was about 40 minutes. But I think this thing can last you for a while, maybe like 6 or 8 hours. Yes. So we found this one works. I heard that over in the Ottawa office, you found that a different battery also works really well.
Yeah, actually, George Herbert had recommended
Yeah.
this Belkin one, and I've got it up here on screen, so maybe we can just show that quickly, Lisa. This is the Belkin Mixit Power Rockstar. This is a 10,000 milliamp hour, and it's got two USB ports, um, but I believe one of those USB ports has 4.8 amps. So when we're talking about Webcaster X2, we've done some tests, and really you want to make sure that your USB output has at least 3 amps to to power Webcaster, and anything less than that, you might run into problems. This is a relatively low power device, but 3 amps is what's recommended. So you have to make sure, not you're not necessarily wanting to look at the milliamp hour rating, because milliamp hour rating is like your capacity of your battery, whereas the amperage output is going to tell you how much power it can feed to your device. So we recommend 3 amps or higher. This Belkin one has 4.8 amps, so it should be overkill for Webcaster. So that's a couple nice batteries. So you recommend the Anchor one. George has recommended this Belkin, and I know he's tested it, so it works really well. Of course, the links to all of these accessories we're including in the YouTube video description. We've also got a thread on the Epiphan forum, so I'll just show that very quickly. But this is the Webcaster Accessories. So if you go to epiphan.com/forum, there's a Webcaster X2 section on the forum that's got lots of great information about Webcaster X2. We've got a lot of users who are sharing their best practices, sharing tips and camera recommendations. So just check out this thread for the accessories, and we'll include links to everything we're talking about here today. Um, so you got the battery, but you also said you needed that little power cable as well,
Yeah,
Marta.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe you could point that out a little more.
Yeah, just make sure when you're picking one out, we recommend the Adafruit because that's what we're using, the Adafruit barrel type N. So there's really not much to say about it. You want to think about like how long it is too. If you have a setup that requires a bit more, I guess, like cable length that you might need. Yeah, but just make sure it's barrel type N because that's what the Webcaster is using.
And we have, I'll just show the picture of this one here. This is the one that we've tested. It's the Adafruit USB to 2.1 millimeter male barrel jack cable. I think the wire gauge is what makes this better. I think we tested some cables that had like a thinner wire gauge and they weren't as reliable.
Mm-hmm.
So this one has a 22 AWG. It's like $3. So get yourself a couple of them, and then if one of them breaks, you've got a backup. Okay, so we've got power now to our mobile webcaster. We've got the battery. We've got the cable. You're going to need a way to get into your webcaster's UI sometimes so that you can pair with your mobile hotspot perhaps, or maybe you want to change the title and video description on your stream and tweak your bit rates, all that great stuff. So you need a way to do that, right? So how have you been doing that, Marta?
Well, we have been using this external monitor. This particular one is the BestView S7 4K. I mean, for our purposes, it doesn't really matter that it's 4K, but it works really well, and it's also on the lower price end of the spectrum. These things can run, up to like $400. I think this one is actually under 200. We do have links to these products in the description. And yeah, so this one has been working really nice. It actually has this really nice area right here where you can actually put in a camera battery. So one of those like standard Canon batteries, you can power this thing up because it does need some power to run, but you can use it on the go if you put the battery in there. And yeah, you can use it to tweak whatever you want. We had it in our setup kind of fixed on the tripod right there. We're going to be talking about how we fixed it onto there. But yeah, so this best view is something that worked well for my particular setup.
Now, I've actually got the exact same monitor which I use for my shooting kit. I love it. It's got one of the things I really like about it is it has HDMI pass-through as well. So you can have an HDMI out going to another monitor or going to perhaps another device that you might need. The other thing is it's got that quarter 20 mount right on the bottom. So that's going to be compatible with most of your video mounts. There's also SDI input if you ever wanted to use it for that. The one thing that I would say if I had a complaint about the BestView S7 is that the actual screen itself is a little bit on the glossy side. So if you are going to pick up this particular monitor, make sure that it comes with the screen hood. Because if you're out in the field on a bright sunny day, it might actually be a little bit tricky to see what you're doing on the screen with that glossy screen. So the monitor hood can help with that, and I think it attaches with Velcro or something.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Dan. You can actually see on the photo of the setup that there's a really big glare highlight on the actual screen. Yeah,
I think you were using a different monitor there, but you can still see that glare comes into play anytime you're using a monitor inside.
That's what I mean. You got to keep that in mind on the sunny day, especially. Definitely, that's a good point.
Well, that's a good tip as well. Now, we do have a couple quick questions coming in, which I'll answer. Scott was asking, hey, Scott, how are you? He was asking if we're going to be at NAB. Yes, I believe we will be at NAB. So if you are going to make it to NAB this year, it would be great to catch up with you there. Matthew Gowan was asking, he loves seeing the gear that can be used out in the field. He's asking about internet connectivity.
We're going to get to that.
The Verizon MiFi unit. Now, Scott, being here in Canada, we don't have access to the Verizon and AT&T hotspots. I personally am just using my cell phone over the Bell network. We also have something like this, which is just like an LTE dongle, which you can buy from your cell phone network providers. So I'll leave it to our PA team. Why don't we jump ahead? Like, what are you using for data, Marta? What have you been?
Yeah, I'm actually using Verizon. I was actually just using my cell phone as a hotspot. So I just went into the settings and shared my Wi-Fi. And then I used the screen to go into the Webcaster settings and just connect to this Wi-Fi. Yeah, I have a Verizon plan. It's pretty limited, like it's not unlimited internet. So I was trying to be really careful with it. But it worked pretty well. Now you have to keep in mind that speed does matter. So you have to go out into the field and test the speed beforehand. See how many megabits you're getting. I think we have a link to like a speed test probably in the description. I mean, if we don't, you can always just Google internet speed test, see what comes up. Yeah, so for our particular test, we found that in the area where we were shooting, it was a bit low because it was kind of like a mall, covered areas. So we did have some trouble. I think the minimum we were getting is 1 megabit, which is, maybe not enough. Somewhere around 6 megabit per second is where you want to be with
Okay,
that.
that's a good tip. And another thing to consider is, as far as testing goes, to consider changing conditions. Sometimes weather can affect your Wi-Fi signal. Microwaves can affect your Wi-Fi signal. I'm sure Scott would have some experience with this as well. But let's say you're streaming at a venue. Once you get 100 people in there with their cell phones as well, like you might do your tests earlier in the day when the venue is empty, but once you get 100, 150 people in there with their cell phones, it might create some problems for your network. So these are all things to take in consideration and test in advance. Of course, if you're moving around, you might have a little bit less. You might have more spikes and dips. So one of the tips that I'd share is just if you're not sure if what your streaming bandwidth is, it doesn't hurt to go down from 1080p to 720p. I mean, if you're streaming to Facebook with your Webcaster, Facebook's only going to show 720p anyways. I know they were trying to make the jump to 1080p, but it's not quite there yet. So a 720p stream with something like 4 megabit or 3 megabit will probably give you better results than trying to squeeze every last ounce of bit rate when you don't have the bandwidth to do so. Now, have you run into any similar kind of problems? You were saying that like when you moved around with your
Yeah. It was kind of difficult to find a good spot in my particular location. I mean, it did have a lot of people. Again, it was like a shopping center that we were doing these tests on. But like we found a good stretch of land where the speed was fairly consistent. Also, I hear Verizon has pretty nice like hotspot devices that you can use. So they're just like your cell phone, only just a separate device with maybe unlimited plans. But again, I wanna point out that it's important to go out and test the speed at the location beforehand, before the actual live shoot that you want to do.
Okay, that's a great tip, Marta. Okay, so we've talked about powering your Webcaster on the go. We've talked about the monitor. You still need a way to sort of navigate your UI on Webcaster. And in many
Yes,
cases,
yes.
it's the smartest move is to set up your Webcaster settings in advance of your stream. But if you're out in the field and you're on the go and maybe you're streaming multiple locations, multiple streams, you're going to want to be able to start and stop your stream, maybe change your video title several times on the go when you're not, in the comfort of your own home. How do you go about doing that? What do you use to navigate the Webcaster UI, to type in your descriptions, that kind of thing?
So what we've been using for that, Dan, is this tiny little keyboard, the RII keyboard, and it's really tiny. I mean, it fits into your hand, and it has the keyboard, like the full keyboard, and this little trackpad that's actually your mouse. It takes a little bit, time of just getting used to it, but it's really neat. It has this little USB dongle in the back right here. So you just go ahead and plug it into your Webcaster, and you've got yourself a keyboard. It has a rechargeable battery, but I think I've never actually recharged this thing, so it can last a really long time. And this keyboard is lovely to use on the go because you can use it to type the weirdest password. Those Wi-Fi passwords are always really, really weird. You can use that. That's really nice. And also, what's really cool is you can use the keyboard shortcuts that we have. It's on the Epiphan website for Webcaster. The shortcuts you can use to switch views. We're actually going to be talking about one more thing that we can do with the Webcaster, which is plug two cameras in and switch views. So once we talk about that, I'm gonna point this out again. So by pressing different keys, you can switch views with the two cameras that you have. I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of keyboard shortcuts for Webcaster. So I think Tab will switch between your HDMI camera source and your USB camera source. You can do some picture-in-picture. You can move your picture-in-picture frame around on the screen. All of these key commands that are available on Webcaster. I think we actually have an Epiphan U video that goes into great detail about all of those key commands. So check the Epiphan YouTube page, and you should find that Epiphan U training on the YouTube channel. But you can also find it in the documentation on the product page for Webcaster. So you touched on something there, and that was a second camera. And that's something that a lot of people have asked about with Webcaster. Now, Webcaster really primarily designed to be an HDMI, a single HDMI video source, 1080p or 720p. We want to remind people that interlaced signals not going to work with Webcaster. You need to have a progressive scan signal, 1080p or 720p. However, there is a beta feature on Webcaster where you can plug a USB webcam into the USB ports on your Webcaster X2 and then have a second camera source. So I know you have tried doing that, Marta, and you had a couple recommendations.
Yes. So, and I actually remember you guys doing it on the show as well, where you have two cameras and you're actually switching out the camera, the views. So this one, the Logitech C920, is actually one of the most popular models on the market right now, and it works great. So you just go ahead and plug it into your Webcaster. It is a beta feature, so you have to go into the UI and make sure that this beta feature is on in the preferences. And then from then, it's really simple. Plug it in. Maybe you will need to reboot if you've just activated the feature, and then you have yourself two cameras. You have your HDMI input and you have your USB input. You can actually have maybe one of the cameras pointed at the reporter out on the field. The other camera is pointing at the action. So I think it's a really great feature. Having two cameras with one streaming device is really awesome.
Perfect. Now, that USB camera, that's the Logitech C920. We've got a link for it in the description.
Yeah.
That is the most
C920.
popular webcam in the world right now. And actually, surprisingly, the picture quality that you can get with that camera is pretty good. So cool. That's a great recommendation, Marta. Now, Alex on Facebook was asking about running graphics with Webcaster. Webcaster is really designed for just using an HDMI or a USB camera source. So are you going to be able to do complex lower third graphics with this device? Probably not, unless you're doing that upstream, so before you bring your video signal in. So what I would recommend, if you do want to do some more stuff with graphics or overlays, take a look at some of our other devices, the Pearl 2, and check out our product page for Pearl 2, and keep your eye on the Pearl family of products, because that will be able to do all of your graphics and overlays, and that's actually what we're using on this show right now. Okay, great recommendation with the webcam. Now, you've got all these accessories, Marta. You've get them out in the field. I saw your video, which I'll just play a little clip of it here, but you're moving around quite a bit, and I think you just threw some of your kit right in the backpack so that you can move around while shooting, which was pretty
hmm
cool.
So
That
that
worked out
was like,
okay?
yeah, that was our like bare bones setup. So even if you're not using a tripod, what you can do is you can just have the three and a half, four things. So you have your webcaster, you have your camera, and you have your battery to power up your webcaster. And now, provided you've set everything up beforehand, you can just go out into the field, turn on the Wi-Fi. So you've set up your webcaster to connect automatically to this Wi-Fi network that you have, your hotspot, and that's it. You're ready to go. So you can put your webcaster and your battery into your backpack. That's actually what I did. You can have your camera, and that's it. You're mobile. You're live. It's a great setup. It worked for us very well.
I mean, it's the kind of quality that you're able to get with that XF205 camera, and you've got the zoom. I mean, if you wanted to do some like mobile journalism or
Yeah.
citizen journalism, or you wanted to cover an event live, I mean, this is a pretty cool setup with the backpack and being able to move around. But in other cases, I see the tripod there. A tripod can come in handy if you're going to be in a fixed location, and we've showed your tripod. Now I noticed with your tripod, you've got your accessories connected to the tripod so that they're fixed in place. So can
Right.
you show us how you did that? What did you use?
Right. So to mount all the accessories onto the kind of side of the tripod, we use these contraptions, these devices. This is a clamp, and this thing is called a ball head arm. So basically, what you do is you need two clamps and one of these arms right here, and you fix one of the ends to the side of the tripod, and then you use this as the connector, and then the other end is used to fix your device. So if you look at the image closely, you can kind of see that we have the webcaster mounted there on the left. And then for the monitor, you can use this. This is fine too, because it has this little, is it called a shoe? Can
It's
you
like a hot
remind
shoe.
me?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
hot
yeah,
shoe,
yeah, hot shoe. That's
a
right.
shoe mount. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then it
shoe
goes to
mount.
like a quarter 20 threaded, which is as far as production gear goes, that quarter 20 is going to work for a whole slew of devices.
Yep. So you can either use this, or there's also this thing that's called the magic arm or an articulating arm, right? So you kind of fix, you also need a clamp. You would fix this end to your maybe tripod, and then you would fix the monitor in place the way you need to. Fix it all up so it doesn't move. And then you can actually turn your monitor whichever way. So if you need to be behind the camera, you can turn the monitor your way. And then if you need to be in front of the camera, you can turn the display around and see what you're getting, basically. So it's a really cool thing. I love this. This is like Legos. Playing with this was really fun, actually.
Yeah, I've also heard those arms referred to as like a dog bone, but I do like the point that you made is that when you go with that external monitor and you've got it fixed on your tripod, you can turn that around and put it in the direction you need it, which is nice if you're doing something. Let's say that you've got your camera on a tripod and you want to, instead of being behind the camera, you want to go in front of the camera and maybe talk to your audience. It's nice to have that big monitor, be able to turn it around and see it as a reference monitor while you're streaming.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. And you can see online there's many different modifications of these things. I'm sure you can kind of figure out what you need, what your setup needs, and then get the parts that you need. They're really not that expensive. I think this clamp is maybe like $8 on Amazon. So it's a really cool like plaything even.
Awesome. Awesome. Super cool. So we've talked about power, monitors, keyboards, clamps. Are there any other tips that you'd have to share about Webcaster? Any other little niche devices that might be useful?
Yeah, another really cool thing I found, maybe not for going mobile, maybe just in studio use. We have this audio inserter, the HDMI audio inserter, and this is really useful if you want your audio to come in not from your HDMI source, but from somewhere else. So you have a microphone hooked up on you, or maybe a mixer. So this thing allows you to get really high quality audio with your Webcaster, which I think is amazing. So the way it works is you just plug in your HDMI source. This thing kind of cancels out the audio that you have in there. Keep in mind, this is not like a mixer. You're not mixing two audio sources. You got to choose one. So it cancels out that audio, but then you plug in an analog 3.5 millimeter cable in here with your audio, and that's the audio that's going to go into your stream. So I think this is a really nifty device.
Yeah, that's a super cool device. In many cases, it might make sense to bring your microphone into your camera through like an XLR input and get your audio onto HDMI into your webcaster that way. But let's say you may be doing a mixer board where you have multiple cameras multiple microphones, and you want to be able to mix those mics. You can do all your mixing on something like a field mixer or an ordinary mixer, and then take your analog output off your mixer and pair it onto your camera's HDMI signal, which this device works great for that. The other thing that's cool is like you could power this off a battery as well. It's just a 5-volt, 2-amp device, so you could power this off a battery in the field if you had to. Now we have sorry to interrupt. We do have a question coming in from Race TV Live. What will happen if you offer up an interlaced signal to your Webcaster X2? It won't work. Webcaster X2 is specifically designed for 1080p and 720p signals. So if you're not sure with what your camera's HDMI output offers, definitely check the documentation for your camera. Now, the problem is many cameras don't actually specify a whole lot of information about the HDMI output signal. So what I would recommend to do is to try plugging your camera into a television. If you have like a smart TV or a big screen TV, plug it into your television, and in many cases your television will be able to tell you whether that signal is a 1080i or a 1080p signal. 1080i signals will not work with Webcaster, unfortunately. So if you're not sure, there's a few ways you can check. What I would recommend is to actually go here on the Epiphan forum, and we'll show that in just a moment. There's a great forum thread on the Epiphan forum that lists off many people listing off what cameras they've tried with Webcaster X2, which cameras they can confirm will work, and also some cameras that we can confirm will not work. So if you're not sure, do your research, find out, make sure that your camera actually sends out a 1080p signal. The other thing is many, whether it's older DSLR cameras or even some newer ones, they don't give a clean HDMI output. So the menus might be overlaid on your stream, or some may not actually have audio on the HDMI output at all. So do make sure that your HDMI output on your camera is 1080p or 720p, that it's a clean signal, meaning that there's no overlays, no menu items on that output, and also make sure that your output actually carries audio if you do want to have audio on your camera stream.
That's a good point, Dan. And also, to add to that, if you did invest in an expensive camera, but there's no audio output, so if the video comes through, but there's no audio, which happens sometimes, you can actually use the audio inserter to fix that. So you would just put your video HDMI signal through, and then you would need a microphone or some other audio input, and you'll have both audio and video.
Perfect. We should go see what's happening outside. I can hear the fire trucks going by.
That happens a lot here.
Yeah, you must be close to a station.
Yeah.
So Roland on YouTube is asking, will it keep your audio in sync? Yes. The HDMI, so the great thing is when you're using a digital signal, so if your HDMI output directly from your camera is always going to be the best way to make sure your audio is in sync. So bring your microphone into your camera, and then bring your picture and your audio from your camera out over HDMI into your Webcaster. It will be in sync. Now this, in the testing that I've done, this audio inserter, this is from Monoprice, and there is a link in the video description. This audio inserter doesn't add any noticeable latency when you're pairing your digital HDMI picture with the analog audio input. I haven't been able to notice any significant latency. There might be some, but it's not enough that it would cause any annoying discrepancy there. So hopefully that answers your question. So you had one other interesting find, Marta, that I wanted to touch on this show. And that was a lot of people ask, like they want to be able to switch between multiple HDMI cameras. So Webcaster X2 can switch between an HDMI camera source and a USB camera source. But what if you have 2 or 3 HDMI cameras that you want to switch between? I had done some testing myself with just like an inexpensive HDMI switcher. But the problem I found is that when I switched my HDMI sources, the video signal would drop for 3 or 4 seconds. So it would cut to black before switching to the new source, the second source or third source or what have you. But you said you found something that worked better.
Yeah, I found this little device. Actually, just it's also a switcher. I just took a sticky note of it, and it says works. Because
Works.
I have been testing a few devices, and some of them were a bit, laggy. So what this is an HDMI switcher. This particular one is the Revison Multiviewer. So what you do is you plug in your 2 HDMI sources. It does need power, so you do have to plug it in. And then you have one out, right? So you can actually switch between the 2 sources. You have all kinds of nifty buttons here. So you have source, you have mode. So not only if you have your webcam plugged in, you can actually have 3 sources. But you can use this little thing to actually do kind of a picture-in-picture of the 2 HDMI sources. You can have a totally crazy setup. Just, I mean, really cool with this thing that's, it's designed for a really simple setup. This thing allows you to bring in a completely, different story, really elevate the production value here. So, what I wanted to mention is, yes, there is a little bit of lag, especially at first, but the picture never goes black. It just it takes a while to switch between the 2. But I found that this particular model, the Revison, actually works pretty well. So I would recommend it. It's just really cool to play with it.
Now, I've got it here. It is available on Amazon.com, $76. So if you did want to be able to switch multiple HDMI cameras and then feed that into your Webcaster, this is I think probably the most affordable way you're going to be able to do that. George Herbert had also recommended another device. Yes, so BBI Productions, you're exactly right. The HDMI switcher also needs to be a scaler in order to maintain a stable output. So if it's just a simple dumb HDMI switch without a scaler, the problem that you're going to run into is when you switch, almost like when you switch sources on your television, the screen is going to go to black in between your switch. So you might have 3 or 4 seconds until the new source kicks in. If you have a scaler built into your switcher as well, then that switch is going to be seamless. So here's the Revison that you've got, Marta, and this is on Amazon, relatively affordable. It's in stock on Amazon.com right now. And then George Herbert had recommended this one that he found on B&H. This one might have some additional features as well. It's a little bit more expensive, but this is a 2x1 HDMI, picture-in-picture, picture-over-picture, and it's got a scaler as well. So this should make seamless switches between HDMI sources for you if that's something that you wanted to do. Now, I think that's a pretty good summary of some of the accessories.
Yeah.
Any other tips that you'd share? I mean, any other things that you want to try with your Webcaster? What are you going to be doing?
I mean, I'm gonna see if I can try to find one of these, the HDMI switcher, with maybe 4 slots. I have tried some of them with 4 slots, but that was not good at all. Maybe there's one out there that would work with uh, 4 slots. We've done some more tests. We've done a setup. You mentioned a scaler. We've done a setup where we had a lecture going. So we had a computer. The HDMI source was going simultaneously to a screen. So it was a projector and it was on the screen. And at the same time, we were using an HDMI splitter to split the signal, split and scale. That's important. And then the HDMI source was going into the Webcaster. So I thought that was really cool. Oh, we also had a USB camera set up so we could see the lecture. So we had a really kind of modest setup, but I think the overall production value was pretty cool. So you can also try doing that. That's the HDMI scaler.
Perfect. Now, I'll just touch very quickly on a couple other little items. One of the questions that we've gotten is regarding LTE dongles like this one, and people want to be able to use these for their LTE hotspot. So one of the little tricks is that you can actually power this dongle right off the USB port on your Webcaster. Now, these aren't communicating over USB. I'll point that out. All you're doing is you're powering this dongle and then you're connecting the standard way via Wi-Fi. So that's one just sort of cool trick that I know some people have done. Or you could plug this into your battery bank, which would probably be the best idea if you do have a battery bank with multiple USB ports. That way you're not increasing the power draw of the Webcaster itself. Another sort of interesting thing that we're starting to hear people trying is actually using a USB audio device with the USB port on the Webcaster X2. Now, this is not like an officially supported feature, but technically it is possible to use some HDMI audio devices with the USB ports on this. We've been doing some testing here, and we're going to be able to share some of those results with you guys in the near future. It might be nice to be able to bring in some other audio sources over a USB audio mixer or like a simple USB audio input device. So if you are interested in that, do come over to the Epiphan forum. So you're going to see this thread that we've created. This is the Webcaster X2 Accessories thread. We've included links to everything we talked about here today. So post what you're using. We'd love to see what your kit looks like, some of your recommendations. If you've tested a USB audio device that works, let us know. And we'll share any of our results on other accessories there as well. I do think we have another comment coming in here from Race TV Live. He'll be feeding 6 broadcast cameras via a switcher, and they shoot in 50i. Is there hardware to de-interlace the stream into the X2? That's a good question, Race TV. I actually don't know if there's a way to de-interlace and convert. I'm sure there is a way to convert an interlace signal to a progressive scan signal. But really, by the sound of it, what you're trying to do with 6 cameras, maybe you should check out the Pearl 2. It's a device that is much more in line with the type of production that I think you're into. So do check out the Pearl 2 on our product page. There's a link below in the YouTube video description to our product page. Check out Pearl 2, because when it comes to multiple sources and switching and being able to handle interlaced signals, Pearl 2 is the perfect device for that. Anything else you want to add, Marta?
No, Dan, I think you said it all. Definitely check out the Epiphan forum where we have all the links to descriptions, and good luck with your tests. I hope you also make some interesting findings that you can write us about.
Very cool. So I think we'll leave it at that for today. As I mentioned, we will be in Amsterdam at ISE next week, booth 11-C115. So come say hello. I'll be there signing autographs. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be happy to.
I will come, Dan. I will come to get your autograph.
Oh, okay. Well, I look forward to it, Marta. It'll be great to see you there. But actually, I don't think you'll be at ISE, but maybe we'll see you at NAB later in the year, a little closer for you on the West Coast.
Sure, Dan.
So we'll leave it at that for now. Now, next week, because we'll be at ISE, we're going to be live streaming every day. So live at Epiphan, our Thursday afternoon show, I don't believe we'll be doing it next week because of the time difference. It would be a little too late for most of us here. So make sure to check in with our YouTube page throughout the week, and our Facebook. Will be streaming. You'll get notifications there. And look forward to seeing you all on the forum and in the comments down below. So until next week, this is Live at Epiphan, and we'll see you guys later. Cheers.
Bye.